On this episode, we travel to Portland, Oregon for the 4th International Walk 21 Conference. The 3rd National Congress of Pedestrian Advocates is held the same week. We cross the Columbia River for the Vancouver International Discovery Walk Festival. Portland celebrates the 100th anniversary of their Olmsted plan. Olmsted's vision of a 40-mile loop trail is finally being realized. A neighborhood group works on local trail connections. Finally, a suburban sports arena moves downtown. Stay tuned. We're in Portland, Oregon, talking with Rodney Tolley, who's director of Walk 21. What is Walk 21?
It's an international organization designed to help professionals to encourage the growth of cities where people want to walk or feel encouraged to walk.
Now, what's been going on here in Portland the last few days?
Well, we've just finished a wonderful, inspiring event which was called Walk 21-4, which was the 4th International Walking Conference, which brought together delegates from around the world, something like 20 countries, I think, including many, of course, from the US and Canada.
What happens at a conference like this?
Well, we, I think, pat ourselves on the back to reassure each other that we're doing good things. I think that's really important, to reward people, to let them know that they are doing the right thing. But we also inform each other about what is developing around the world, what is good practice, what is the best kind of thing, what works and what doesn't work in terms of encouraging walking in cities. And that may well be data, it may be tools, it may be campaigns, it may be policies, strategies, all kinds of things which actually end up with more people expressing their interest in walking.
When you say this is the 4th conference, where were the other 3?
Well, it started in London in 2000 with the first Walk 21 conference. And to be candid, we had no idea that there would be this kind of interest worldwide in this. And the conference was extraordinarily successful. And the second one then took place a year later in Perth in Western Australia, followed then by one in San Sebastian Donostia in northeastern Spain in May last year. And Ellen van der Sluys, who is the chair of America Walks, bravely decided that she would put on an event here in Portland for the 4th one.
How have the topics and the themes changed since the first conference?
I don't think the themes and topics so much have changed, but what's happened is the depth has got greater. We've moved on in terms of our understanding of walking, and I think what's really significant and important is that it's very evident from around the world that decision makers and politicians and planners and others are realizing much more now than even 4 years ago that walking is an absolutely essential ingredient if you really want a livable place. So we're not just talking about walking as an activity. I mean, I'm dressed today for a walk in the woods, but we're actually talking about everyday walking, the kind of walking that people do with their children to school or to the corner store or to work even, or to the clinic or whatever it might be. In other words, integrating walking into their everyday habits. And if they do that, then we know clearly that there are benefits to them in terms of their own personal health. So we obviously have a lot of health promotion interest in our conferences. But we're also aware that the more you walk in a community, the more the community itself becomes healthy, because there are eyes on the street, so it becomes socially safe. People engage with each other in the street. Children can play in the street. Streets become usable for other things other than just traffic. So you get community benefits as well. And I think what's really coming home to us now is that by encouraging walking, you actually get all of these other hits as well, which is a wonderful byproduct of something which is beneficial to us as individuals.
How's planning going for the next conference?
Well, it's extraordinary. Here we are 2 days after Walk 21-4, and we're already into the planning cycle for the next one, which is taking place in Copenhagen in Denmark from June the 9th to the 11th, 2004. And we already have some exciting plans for future Walk 21 conferences after that. And we're looking very, very much towards those from America and Canada who attended this conference here, plugging even more into their international counterparts and coming to join us in Europe for the 5th conference.
We're in Portland, Oregon, talking with Ann Garrity, who's Executive Director of Walk Sacramento. What is Walk Sacramento?
Walk Sacramento is a pedestrian advocacy group in Sacramento, California. We're organized in 1997, and we're advocating for a walkable environment.
And you're also Vice President of America Walks. What's America Walks?
America Walks is a coalition of 50 pedestrian advocacy groups, such as Walk Sacramento, that is working to make this whole country walkable.
What's been going on here today?
What we've been doing today is the third National Pedestrian Advocates Congress, and we have come together this third time to continue to deliberate on the issues facing pedestrian advocates in our work to make this a more walkable country. And it's been very exciting to be with people who are inspired to do this kind of work.
What sort of issues have people been talking about?
Well, we've focused in on some of the issues that are important to us, and one of them is how do we talk to the people that we need to talk to influence the decisions, such how do we talk to traffic engineers so they can understand our issues and help us make a more walkable community. That was one of the issues that came up. Another issue was how do we bring all the people to the table whose voices need to be heard, because we know that to the extent that we include the voices, all the different people, the seniors, the young people, the different racial groups, all the different kinds of people that we are, that all of us are pedestrians, and that as we listen to each of our diverse groups of people, we will build a more walkable community that serves everyone.
And the many different groups that were represented here, when they head home tonight, what are they going to bring home with them?
I think what they're going to bring home is a renewed sense of mission and enthusiasm for working with their groups at their level and bringing out the message, because it is a message of heart. And what we have heard is, and had reinforced, is that the longing that all of us feel to have a sense of control in our environment, to be able to walk to where we want to walk, to have that kind of freedom. And so people are going to be bringing that home with a renewed sense of excitement.
We're in Vancouver, Washington, talking with Wendy Baumgardner, who's president of International Walk Fest. What is International Walk Fest?
Well, we're a club who hosts the America's only international marching league event, the Vancouver International Discovery Walk Festival. For 3 days in April, we bring in people from all over the world and all over the USA to enjoy walking, fitness workshops, and we also have a little mini triathlon with bikes and swims added in. So it's a real fun time for people to get out, do something active, and have a great time, meet some new international friends, and learn a little bit more about health and fitness.
Someone that wants to walk here, what are their choices?
Well, their choices are anything from a 5-kilometer, 3-mile walk, the standard 10-kilometer walk. Then we have half marathon, 3-quarter marathon, and a full marathon walk. Then they can go biking for 25K or 50K and swimming 300 meters.
And you said the International Marching League. What is that?
Now, there's about 19 countries worldwide, and each one of them is allowed to put on one premier walking event and have it judged to be an International Marching League event. And here in Vancouver, Washington, we put in a bid to create the Discovery Walk Festival back in 1995. And the team of international judges decided that, yes, this would be a great walkable city for them to have the yearly International Marching League event in, and so we've become an International Marching League event. And those include some of the granddaddy walks of the whole world, including the Nijmegen 4-day walk, where you must walk a marathon a day for 4 days to earn the medal. And we're much easier on you. We just ask you 2 days doing a half marathon and you get our medal.
So you have people from a lot of different countries show up for this?
Oh yes, this year we have at least 11 different countries represented, from Europe and from the Far East, and of course our great friends from down under in Australia and New Zealand.
So what has the city been able to do to help you out with your walk festival?
Well, it's been wonderful because the city of Vancouver, being a small-sized city, about 100,000 people, really was looking for an event that would draw tourists to their area and put them on the international map. So they immediately partnered with us to create the festival. And it's their second biggest tourism draw for southern Washington, as a matter of fact. And so they sell more hotel room nights here for our International Discovery Walk Festival than they do for almost any other event in this portion of the state. They also use this to justify creating much more pedestrian and friendly trails and environment. For instance, we've been able to add segments segments to the Renaissance Trail along the Columbia River and to our other Greenway trails by saying, well, my goodness, we're going to be having those Discovery Walk Festival people coming in April, and we need to make our trail system into a continuous trail so have a great place to walk.
We're in Portland, Oregon, talking with Mike Hauk, who's Executive Director of the Urban Green Spaces Institute. What is the Institute?
Well, the Institute is dedicated to making sure we integrate parks, trails, and green spaces. And by green spaces, I mean natural areas, fish and wildlife habitat, into the built environment in the Portland-Vancouver region.
And what's your background? What other involvement have you had in that over the years?
Well, I really got started as urban naturalist at Audubon Society Portland 25 years ago, and I'm still working for Portland Audubon Society. It's a local chapter that was founded in 1902, but I started the Institute because I was really interested in urban design and how parks fit into the urban fabric, which is a little outside Audubon's mission, so I just decided to branch out and look at the urban design questions.
And speaking of parks and urban design, what's been going on today?
Well, we've had, actually in my mind, one of the most wonderful meetings we've had in Portland in many years. It's the Olmsted Landscape Legacy. We're celebrating the centenary of John Charles Olmsted having come to Portland and Seattle and written park master plans for both cities in 1903.
What's the importance of the Olmsteds to parks in U.S. cities?
Well, obviously, you'd have to go back to John Charles Olmsted's adoptive father, Frederick Law Olmsted Sr., who designed Central Park, was responsible for the Emerald Necklace in Boston, and had a huge influence on the parks movement in the United States. John Charles Olmsted, his adopted son, was brought at the behest of the Portland Park Board and Seattle Park Boards. They got together and collaborated, sharing expenses. Brought Olmsted out to Portland in April of 1903, and December 31st of that year, he presented a master plan for a comprehensive interconnected system of parks in Portland. And the reason I got very interested in the plan was that he spoke very presciently and eloquently toward the need to protect streams and steep slopes and other features of the natural environment as part of a comprehensive park system, in addition to the active recreation facilities, the ball fields, boulevards, parkways, and what most people think of as typical parks. What I liked about the Olmsted vision was it integrated the natural, the built environment, and the active recreation, and he didn't use the term fish and wildlife habitat or ecosystem management, but that's what he was really getting at back in 1903.
The city's had 100 years. What's become of the plan?
Well, the parkways and boulevards really were not implemented, with the exception of Terwilliger Parkway, which is a beautiful boulevard in Portland in the West Hills. And there are a few little remnants, little scattered examples of parkways in Portland. But much of the landscape that he advocated be acquired or somehow protected. For example, 4,700 acre Forest Park exists. A large waterway park in the Columbia Slough in North Portland, 2,000 acres, Smith and Bybee Lakes exists. Many of the neighborhood and community parks, Mount Tabor, Selwood, a large number of the parks that he recommended in 1903 actually exist in the current system. Then, of course, there have been many other elements of the system added, and frankly, one of the inspirations for our regional green spaces measure that provided us with $135.6 million in 1995 for acquisition, added another 8,000 acres to the natural area system. So we have a long ways to go. We haven't implemented everything Olmsted recommended in 1903, particularly the boulevards and parkways, but we're working on it. And we're using that plan as our inspiration for future acquisitions and management.
So today's conference, you weren't just looking back at the past century, you're looking forward to the next century too?
We're informing ourselves in order to have a more, I think, comprehensive and educated view on what we should be doing. And obviously, it's 100 years later. we're adapting Olmsted's plan from 1903 to our own needs today. But that his plan is so phenomenal with respect to describing the landscape and the comprehensiveness of the system and the interconnectedness of the system that it's still a great green print for today.
We're in Portland, Oregon, talking with Barbara Walker. What is the 40-mile loop?
The 40-mile loop is a combined bicycle and pedestrian trail that encircles the city of Portland. Most of the way the trails are combined, but if the topography makes it impossible to have them done in an ecological way, we use separate trails.
Where'd the idea originally come from?
From the Olmsted brothers. John Charles Olmsted wrote a report for the Park Board of the City of Portland in 1903, and that report has become the blueprint or Bible, depending on how you look at it, of park system for Portland in the last 100 years. We're celebrating his 100th anniversary or centennial just this month.
How much of the loop was put into place, right after 1903 when the plan was written?
Dreamer. He said then, and it's the same as it is now, you must acquire the land betimes, was the way he phrased it, meaning as soon as possible, because it will never be less expensive and it will never remain available. You will run out of a chance to purchase it. Every generation says the same thing to the next generation, but it hadn't been done. So the original part of the plan for the pathways, first of all, I should tell you, the original part of the plan was started to be for touring motor cars. And in Portland, we have adapted that to bicycle and pedestrian trails, which is more appropriate now. We have places for automobiles. Originally, there was a city park, which is now called Washington Park in the city, and he suggested a Terwilliger Boulevard. Those both were built early, back in the city park expanded back before the First World War. The Terwilliger went in at about that time too. I mean, the city park had been there for quite a while, but it kept expanding and becoming something more. Terwilliger was put in not exactly where he asked for it, but still on the hillside with magnificent views. It took until the 40s till Forest Park, our now almost 5,000 acre forest reservation entirely within the city, was purchased by the city. Much of it came from property which had gone for back taxes during the Depression and landslides. And then it took until 1981 for the 40-mile loop land trust to form to try to resurrect this idea and make it happen. And we're now 22 years later, and we have acquired 3/4 of the land and developed 2/3 of the trail, and the 40 miles is really like 140. So that's a good deal more than we ever expected.
How does the land trust work? Where does that fit into the puzzle of getting the trails built?
The land trust is a small group of 7 to 15 members who all believe that this is very important. We do it entirely voluntarily. We have no staff, no overhead, and our business is not so much, as many land trusts are, to raise money as it is to be the catalyst to acquire the land, whether we acquire it or whether we convince someone to give it to the city or one of the jurisdictions with which we're working. We work with the City of Portland, the City of Gresham, the City of Troutdale, and the City of Fairview. We work with Multnomah County, Clackamas County, Clackamas County. We work a lot with Metro, the regional government here in Portland. And now, which would just clutter up your program for me to tell you all these names, but we work with many cities outside Portland because as the loop is being formed, many, many cities have begun to make connecting trails coming into it. And this would include Milwaukee, Oak Grove, beyond Gresham, Boring, Estacada hasn't come in yet, but is there on the edge. Fano Creek Trail goes out through Beaverton, Beaverton, Tigard, Tualatin. I've missed one. And it is not yet connected into us, but they're still working on a connection from the edge of Portland into the Willamette Greenway.
Now, what is it about the trail that all these communities want to hook up to it?
Part of it's the magic of knowing that you can go anywhere. Part of it is the connectivity. It connects, the trail connects to things where people want to go, where people live, where to major institutions, to workplaces, to above all to major parks, regional and city, and cultural institutions. The idea is to connect people to all the major things in the city and to do it in a hub around and then have connecting trails that come back through.
We're in Portland, Oregon, talking with Don Bach with Southwest Trails. What is Southwest Trails?
Well, Southwest Trails is a group of about interested people, 700 interested people in Southwest that are looking to improve our pedestrian environment by advocating for better pedestrian facilities and cross streets and crossings and things like that. But in addition, and more important, to put together a system of trails for major arterial connections so that they can walk from place to place without making huge detours. Our geography is such that it makes it very difficult to get around. We got a lot of steep terrain. It's very beautiful, but it's also very difficult to get around. So we work on a lot of unbuilt right-of-ways, trying to get additional right-of-ways, and trying to get a better chance for the pedestrian. And that's the essence of what we're about. We also work on safe routes to school. We work on making sure that unbuilt rights-of-way aren't vacated by the city fathers, that we basically improve our pedestrian environment by lobbying for additional funding, and also put a lot of physical labor into doing it ourselves. We develop maps for our neighborhood, so we've got a very nice map in conjunction with the city of Portland that has been put together that we can see where these various hidden connections are, and that lets us walk much better.
You mentioned do-it-yourself labor. What are you able to do as an independent group?
Well, in the city of Portland, we probably are a little different than some other places. We've got a lot of unbuilt rights-of-way. We also have a lot of facilities that are substandard, and as a result, we've been able to work out with the city to do temporary, I guess you would call them temporary improvements, so they don't have to be ADA standard, mainly because of the terrain. We have very steep terrain, and so we use a lot of steps and so on, which we can build in a narrow right-of-way and still achieve getting from point to point. And as a result, we build them at very low cost relative to what it would cost the city to do it, because we use creosote-treated railroad ties, and we gravel. We'll never use bark in any of our trails. Because it's just a constant maintenance problem and makes them mucky. But we use gravel and railroad ties, and in some cases we've even used brick, where the brickwork was some part of an old trail and we just added onto it and increased it. The whole idea here is to make it economically done. We've had very good success with very low budget in terms of being able to connect up a lot of our neighborhoods.
Now, How does an independent group work with the city? How does that relationship work?
Well, if you get 700 people on your email list and they're willing to write a letter or call or so on, that's a huge political force. And the fact that we don't overuse our leverage, but when we call on them and they respond when we do call on them, that's a very important thing. And in addition to that, having a lot of the city staff on the email list, they understand the issues that are important to us, and we can affect their view of the world as it relates to our part of the city. Our part of the city is about 60, 70,000 people, and we have about 16 neighborhoods included in our particular area. And so, we've got a lot of people who are interested in walking, and it's a different view of things than the other part of the city. So it's important that we have a way of communicating politically to do this. The other part is presenting ideas, not always sometimes you have to level the playing field. A lot of times when we started, it was an uphill battle all the way, and we became very difficult to live with in terms of the lobbying. And eventually they accept us, they understand our position, what we're trying to do, and it's become a much better environment.
We're in downtown Washington, D.C., next to the MCI Center. This is the arena where the Washington Capitals and the Washington Wizards play. But they haven't always played here. Back in the 1970s, they built a brand new arena, the Capitol Center, in the middle of a huge parking lot off the Washington Beltway. That was the place to be in the 70s, out in the suburbs. But in the 1990s, your patrons would just get stuck in traffic on the way to the arena. So the same team owner that built the Cap Center in the burbs built the MCI Center right here downtown. We're directly over the red, yellow, and green lines on the Metro Rail system. Over half the patrons coming to the game use transit. Fans leaving the game, instead of confronted with endless parking lots, can go right across the street and patronize a restaurant or a bar, or go to a nearby apartment building if they happen to live that close. You can do that here downtown. What do you do with that obsolete relic of the 70s freeway culture? Best thing you can do is just blow it up.
Visit us on the internet at www.pedestrians.org.